Welcome to the Purpose Focused Advisor, a podcast for financial planners, advisors, and RIAs looking to get the most out of yourself and your business. Join Rob Brown and Phil Calandra as they walk you through a journey that will allow you to take action in your business and your life so you can be the best that you can possibly be. Now here are your hosts, Rob and Phil.
Welcome back, everybody. Time once again for the Perfect Focused Advisor podcast. Your host, Rob Brown, here today going solo. Phil is happily honeymooning in Italy as we're recording this podcast. But I'm really not alone because we have with us a guest, Alex Neri. Alex is a financial planner with SixPoint Financial Partners up in Pittsford, New York, which I believe is right outside of Rochester.
It is a suburb of Rochester. You nailed it.
All right. And Alex has been in the industry for about 12 years. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because one of the things that has transpired as we've had time to talk with more and more financial advisors is I'm getting the opportunity to meet more and more what I would consider to be next-gen financial planners, advisors who are coming at this very differently than when I first got started in the business. And we did lots of cold calling and pitching stocks and bonds and then kind of converted to financial planning and fee-based business and then got around to actually doing financial planning. So I've had a different career than Alex as a financial advisor and planner. So Alex is in this new generation. So I think that's something that will be fun to explore as we dig into the conversation. So Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here. And it's funny you started by introducing me as having 12 years of experience, which is true, and also still being a young advisor. I feel like I'm 12 years into being told I'm a young advisor. When do I stop being a young advisor?
As soon as you get as old as me and catch up, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I'll do my best.
I don't think we ever catch up with anybody else. But anyway, I think that's actuarially true. But yeah, I don't know. When do you start doing that? They say that what they say about people are older than you when they're more than one generation older. So I think that's right. So
that could be right. I remember
start appearing old when they get to be more than one generation.
Well, I think age is just a number, right? So I remember going to a conference when I was probably 25 or 26 in this business, and definitely a young advisor at that point. And they had a breakout session that was meant to be like for young advisors. It was kind of a growth type thing for young advisors, and like all the speakers there were well into their 40s. And at that time, I kind of had this realization of even in your 40s, you're still a young advisor because, I mean, you might know the statistic, but the average financial advisor is like 58 years old, I think. That number can definitely be wrong, but I guess the point is you get to be a young advisor for a long time in this business.
Yeah, and there is a point at which being called young is a compliment. Maybe use those past that threshold.
Okay, thank you.
But certainly 12 years of experience, and based on our preparation for doing this episode, that experience is substantial because you have a definite vision for your business, how you serve your clients, and where you really want your expertise to shine. So as we get into that, Alex, I'm curious, what got you started? Why do you do what you do today?
Yeah, so I got into this business kind of by accident, which I think you probably hear a lot if you talk to financial advisors. I went to school originally. I went to Mercyhurst University, and I went there thinking I was going to become a physical therapist. And I don't know why. I think it's really unfair that they make you at the age of 17 or 18 years old decide what you think you want to do for the rest of your life. So I went into that program and I got a year into it and had to take an anatomy class. And I really, really quickly decided after taking an anatomy class that I don't care about the human body and I don't want to do anything having to do with healthcare. So I kind of had this I don't know, take a step back type of moment where I had to reevaluate what I thought I want to do with my life. And now I'm still young, 19 years old, and went to a counselor on campus, explained what I didn't like, what I thought I might want to do. They asked what I was good at. I said I've always been a pretty good math student, that math kind of came easily to me. So he suggested I went down this accounting finance path. So I started taking classes on both accounting and finance. I hadn't really committed to a major, but I figured I would do one of those. And then eventually decided that finance had more appeal to me. So I started taking more finance classes and eventually graduated with my degree in finance. But during that time, I did some internships, kind of felt out what was out there, and I learned what a financial advisor does. I think prior to that, I had heard of a financial advisor, but I couldn't have told you much about it. So I was fortunate to have some opportunities to do internships, to learn from some great people, and decided when I was in college that I thought this is what I wanted to do. And then after college, had the opportunity to get started in it and have really had that be my focus ever since. I don't think there's ever been a point in my career where I thought about doing anything differently or thought about seriously making any kind of change. I just am the kind of person, once I got focused on it, that was my career path. And here I am 12 years later.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. It is amazing, the careers or the backgrounds that financial advisors have, because very rarely do I talk with somebody that, you know, I was 17 years old. I picked my college because that college was going to be able to put me on a path towards being a financial advisor or a financial planner.
Yeah,
Usually
it's so hard to know.
yeah, it is. So it
We
is
talk about this. I'm in a networking group, so it's a group of local professionals. So we've got, the accountant, we have an attorney, we have a mortgage person, a realtor. We have all these different professions, and we always end up on the topic of like, how did we get here? And nobody in that room ever thought they were going to be that person. Like you don't wake up in the morning and decide at the age of 17 that you want to be an insurance broker when you grow up, or that you want to be a realtor. Those are kind of careers that you progress towards for a number of different reasons, but it's super interesting to hear other professional stories and how they got to where they are.
Yeah, it really is. And that's, having that curiosity and taking the time to talk about those things is probably also a good trait for you as a financial advisor, because that's a big part of what you have to do in working with clients, is getting to know their stories.
For
So I want to ask you, I talk to a lot of advisors who um, have podcasts or say they would like to have podcasts. Um, but when I ask them why, they're not sure. It just seems like a good thing to do. But you have a podcast, a successful podcast you called Roadmap to Retirement. Talk to me about why you started that podcast and what your objective is in creating regular content for your audience.
Yeah, so we have a podcast, and it's been pretty good from the start. We just started, I think, in March, so we're about 6 months into this. And the idea or the goal behind it was really educational. So I'm a believer in financial literacy. I think it's something that we can all do a better job as a society. I think a lot of times you're talking to people and they always make the offhand comment of, oh, they should teach you this in school. And they kind of put like the burden of responsibility on high schools to teach about personal finance. And although I do think that there is room in education for that, and I've heard of some schools locally at least starting to offer that, I think the problem with that is if you put a 15-year-old kid in a room and you start talking to them about anything from budgeting to investing in retirement accounts to estate tax, like they don't care. So like they'll listen and they'll take the test a little bit, but it's not really going to resonate with them. So I would argue that even if we had that available in public high schools, it probably won't make a huge difference. So what we aim to do with the podcast, some of the other educational stuff that we put out on social media, is to educate people at the moment when it's most interesting to them. So I guess what I mean by that is if we're doing a podcast that's all about, investing in real estate, that's only interesting to you if you're in a position in life where you're starting to think about investing in real estate. So part of the opportunity that we have in the modern world is we can have all this information at our fingertips, and it's up to us to present that to the world in the most meaningful way. So that's what we aim to do with the podcast. We also do webinar series. We do seminars in person here in Rochester. So a lot of what I do and what I'm all about is educating the masses. And of course, that does eventually trickle back to me helping grow my business, but it's something that I believe in doing.
Yeah, that's great, because it's sometimes the best way to grow your business is to do something that you're passionate about, that exposes you to lots of different people. They see that passion, and when they need help, they go, gosh, I've been hearing from Alex for a while now. He's been on those webinars, he's done those seminars, he's
Sure.
doing that podcast, and I hear from him more than I hear from other people who are supposed to be giving me financial
Yeah.
advice.
It all kind of relates back, and I'm actually, I don't think I've announced this publicly, but I'm going to be an adjunct professor in the fall also. So I'm going to start doing some teaching, and it'll be just another experience that all kind of falls into increasing financial literacy. I'm teaching a college class on financial planning, personal finance. So I think it all kind of goes back to our message of, trying to educate the masses. If we start with the young people, I think that gives them a fighting chance, because how many of us graduated college at 22 and went on the workforce, and all of a sudden you've got this packet of information from HR talking about, health insurance benefits, 401k match, and all this stuff. And if I can help these college kids know something when they go out into the job market, even if they don't want to be a professional financial advisor, if they want to work in healthcare or any other industry, it's still going to benefit them to understand how all these things work. So hopefully, we can make a difference there too.
Yeah, and we talk to other, I'm sure you do too, talk to other professionals all the time. We say, I got all of my education in learning how to be a doctor or a lawyer or a pastor, but they never taught me the business behind what I'm doing, which is another element of that financial.
Yeah, I can tell. I was talking to a dentist a few weeks ago, and same thing. He went to school to be a dentist, right? And then he graduates, and then he got into an opportunity where he's able to buy into an existing practice and become a partner there. And he's like, I never knew any of the business stuff. So he's seeing patients and being a dentist and figuring all that stuff out. He's also trying to figure out the business end of it, which there's a lot of professionals that can help you on that journey, but it's not what you're expecting when you're learning how to pull a tooth.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the other thing I'd like to point out about your idea around creating this content on your podcast and webinars is that it's not just a one-time event, because you create this amazing library that you can refer back to. So as people come to you with questions, you can say, I can give you a quick answer, but let me send you over to my podcast, because we just had an episode on this back in March, and I think it would help you out a lot to listen to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's switch gears. When we initially talked, you talked about tax planning as being something that is very central to your financial planning practice, and that you want to, over time, be known as a real tax planning expert. Talk about that. Why is that so important for you as a financial advisor building a practice, but also to the clients that you serve and can share your tax planning knowledge with?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So just so you know, I said a conversation with compliance. I'm not allowed to use the word expert ever. So I am not a tax expert, but I do strive to be the guy in that field. Like I want to be the world's best tax planning financial advisor. I think it's something that we can all strive to do better at. The reason for that, I think, you get into financial planning with people, or you're approached by somebody in public, and they always have the perception of what a financial advisor is or does or focuses on. And most of the time, we all know that they want to talk about investments. So it's, how's my portfolio performing? How's the market? Am I on track? Am I getting a better rate of return from advisor A or B? When I really think that you're missing the whole point here. There's so much more value that we can provide as advisors outside of just the rate of return. And that's not to say that the portfolio is not important, or that we don't want to invest incredibly, well, or make good investment choices. But all of the other parts of financial planning outside of that are equally, or if not more important. And tax planning has kind of become my soapbox a little bit. And I think it's very realistic that retirees, especially, if they're not doing the right tax planning, they might be paying way more in taxes than they need to. And they might, that might overshadow the investment return, meaning that if you're so focused on getting like an extra 0.5% return on your investment portfolio, there's probably equal or more dollars that are left on the table by not making the right tax planning strategies. So that's why I really focus in on that. I am doing everything I can to be the tax guy. I'm very knowledgeable about it. And it's usually where my conversations with clients end up. And you've been through this before, but you know that when they come in, there's the agenda, right? Not the formal agenda, but this is how meetings go. There's a little bit of small talk. How's the grandkids, all that stuff. They ask you about you and your life and all that. And then you move into the let's update your financial plan. We put it on the monitor. We talk about where they are, if they're on track. We touch on the investments for a minute, and they usually have some offhand comment like, oh, yeah, the market sucks, the market's great, whatever it is. But then we spend the rest of the time talking about the tax plan that they're doing. What are their taxes going to look like next year? Are there opportunities to do tax loss harvesting? Should we be doing a Roth conversion? How are the Medicare tables going to come into this? So there's all these other conversations about it. And this is really where I feel that most clients need the most guidance. I think I rambled for a minute, but that's why I'm passionate about it. I think it's really important. I think that it can make a huge difference in your retirement plan. And I think if you're not doing tax planning, you're not doing financial planning.
Yeah, I think that is a strong statement, but a true statement. And I say that from the perspective that I have worked with a lot of advisors over the years who have come into the financial planning business from the tax side, from the accounting side, maybe they were a CPA, and they realize what they were missing in terms of serving their clients when they were just doing tax returns. It wasn't tax planning that they were doing. They were just doing backwards reporting to square things up with the IRS. And there's a huge difference between a tax return and a tax plan. And I think that's what you're so passionate about.
Yeah, and it's a big business opportunity too. Like I talk to, most of our clients that choose to work with us, they're coming from other firms. These aren't people that have never had a financial advisor before. It's they have a financial advisor, and for some reason they are meeting with us because they're open to switching, and then they ultimately do switch. And usually it's, my guy only does this. We run into all the time with the big wirehouse firms that, well, they only do the asset management. They're not talking about the distribution planning. They're not talking about the tax planning. And I just think there's a huge opportunity there. And to be honest, I don't understand why those other firms aren't doing it. Like, I'll leave that where it is. I don't want to say anything bad about anybody else, but it's such a big opportunity. It's what your clients really need. And I think that you can provide it to them and it'll make a big difference in their retirements.
Right. Well, I think that's part of the evolution of the financial planning practice or process, because I was kind of tongue-in-cheek joking a little bit about the differences between you being a next-gen advisor and somebody who started out as an advisor more years ago than I can remember. As much as we said as financial planning was becoming a thing to do, that we were going to do it, we didn't have anything upon which to base it. Certainly weren't years and years of experience of doing financial planning. And now I think that there are a lot of really great financial planners out there like you who truly see the value of the whole plan, not just a part of the plan, not just the investment side or not just the estate planning side to be able to place a life insurance policy. There's just a whole lot more to it. And I think those who call themselves holistic planners today are much more holistic than holistic planners were 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I don't know what exactly the time frame is.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a natural evolution to it. So we're starting to see that really, come to the surface where more and more people are probably sounding like I sound a little bit. I think one of the tough things, though, from the consumer standpoint or from the everyday person out there looking for a financial advisor, is there's not a good way to differentiate. Like they all see us as financial advisors, whether you are the investment guy who's only doing investments, whether you are the insurance salesman who wants to sell us a life insurance policy. It's very hard for the average person to differentiate one person from another. And I think, designations come into that a little bit, but there's still a little bit of a buyer beware feel to the financial advisor space that I think that we can all do better and hopefully address that going forward. But you're right, to your point, it has evolved and we are getting there.
Yeah, and I think we're in much better shape as an industry than the industry gets credit for, because there have been bad actors.
Yes.
But I really love seeing this, and I also think that technology, although it's been a great tool for financial advisors, can also be a crutch. In that an advisor can say, well, I put all your data into the software, and this is what the software says, but don't use that to actually communicate a plan, just an output, which kind of makes them, the term I like to use, kind of like a human robo advisor. They're just spitting out plans. And I think you would agree that that's not the purpose of financial planning tools.
Right. Yeah. I mean, part of, as technology improves, of course, it'll sort of become a bigger crutch, which is bad for what you're saying. But I think it becomes an opportunity for the advisor to sit on the same side of the table as the client, help them interpret the plan, but also hopefully come up with constructive ways to improve the plan. Not just say, okay, the projection says that you have a 75% chance of having a successful retirement. Well, what does that really mean? One, so let's break that down. And two, what can we do to move the needle a little bit? So like for us in our practice, we're meeting with our clients twice a year. And every time we do, we're looking at these projections with a grain of salt, understanding that they're not perfect, that there's a lot of issues with, there's shortcomings. But what can I do to coach you to making better choices to hopefully move the needle in the positive direction? I think, one change that we talk about all the time is, okay, so I have 12 years of experience, like you said. 12 years ago, even, these software programs didn't exist the way they did. We put all the information to the computer, it generated a 90-page report, we hit print. And the problem with that is as soon as you hit print, you deliver it to the client, and now it's obsolete, because we say this all the time, that something's going to change, whether it's, the income that the client needs, whether it's something in the stock market, the economy. It's obsolete the second you print it. So what's the value in it? The value in it isn't having the plan. The value is having the plan is a monitoring tool that we as an advisor can use with our clients to track our progress towards a goal. It's not just having the fancy paper and the nice binding. It's, okay, 6 months ago, you're up 75%. Now you're at 65%. So there's an issue here. What can we do to address that? Or you were at 75%. Now you're 85%. You're moving in the right direction. It might be an opportunity to either enjoy being financially healthy, or maybe it's, okay, you can take out a little bit of a larger distribution this year because I know you really want to go on that trip with your grandkids. Here's some money to do that. So attaching actual meaning to those dollars is hugely important. And I know it makes a difference in our clients' lives. Yeah,
I think that's very well said. So let's change gears again.
Okay.
One of the other things that you mentioned to me in our preparation for this is that one of your big goals, something you're really actively working on, is surrounding yourself with people who have a growth mindset. Talk about that. Why is a growth mindset, or mindset in general, so important to you in the way that you're building your practice?
Yeah, so that's interesting because it's a lot more difficult than you would think. Like I guess I would assume that being in the business world, everybody's trying to grow their business, and like that should come more naturally to some people, but I've struggled to find those individuals, to be very transparent with it. And I think it's important because they say that you're an average of the 10 people you spend the most time with, or whatever it is. So if you surround yourself with people that are complacent or not trying to grow or not pushing to be their best, you'll probably become that. So I guess I would use that as a jumping off point as to why it's important. So I work very hard at that. I am definitely somebody who believes in networking. I like meeting new people, whether they're professionals or, other people in our community. So I try to keep those people close to me. So I have a networking group that I'm unfortunately the guy for. I organize it, which is not always what I want, but I've been able to hand select professionals locally to keep in that group that are in a similar situation. They're young professionals. They're looking to grow their firm or their business, whatever it is they're involved in. We meet once a month and we're able to exchange ideas. And I think that's powerful. I've also got a book club, which is very new. And Rob, you were kind enough to join my book club. We've had one meeting so far, but the same idea. It's, reading a book with another group of professionals, hearing their interpretation of the ideas in the book. And I think that kind of motivates me. And then, outside of those two more organized groups are just the friends that I hang out with and people I try to associate with in life. I want to have a positive attitude. I want them to be growth oriented, like I said. It starts to wear on you if you're around people all the time that are negative or don't want to grow, don't want to do anything. If they just kind of accept the status quo, and we all know people that are in jobs that they've been complaining about for 10 years and they've done nothing about it. And I would challenge those people to, if you really hate your job and you don't want to do it, here's a novel concept, don't do it anymore. Which is not as easy said as it is done, or not as easy done as said, but you get the idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I reading in between the lines and talking about a growth mindset, it's not just growth, it's also being around people who can have a positive influence on you and your life.
Yeah, and I think that's true for everybody. That's not a revolutionary concept, right? I think a lot of people would tell you to surround yourself with positive, upbeat people and all that. But sometimes you have to learn that lesson the hard way in life, or sometimes it's hard to get out of that rut. But I think that's something that I've achieved.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm not sure that I would say that that is universally accepted, because I think there are a lot of people who enjoy being around negative people.
All right. Misery loves company.
Yeah. I'll give you a perfect example. I am a huge Cleveland Indians, Guardians baseball fan. We've had one of the best records in baseball for most of the season, but you go into the Guardians group on Facebook, we lose a few games in a row, we're ready to fire the manager, and just and it's to the point where there's more talk about telling people not to be negative than there is talk about the team. So I think there is that. So I think you have to look for that, and I'm just a big believer in being on the lookout for gratitude and positivity, and being around people who will help you have a better day, who will put a smile on your face, because there is tough stuff that we
There definitely is.
deal with.
And I can relate to the sports example. I'll put you on the spot here. Let's see if you can guess what team I'm talking about. They didn't make the playoffs from the time I was 7 years old until the time I was 24 years old.
Buffalo Bills.
Buffalo Bills, yes. Famous for losing 4 Super Bowls in a row. So I get it. We definitely commiserate as sports fans.
Yeah. Well, I'll do you one better. My Guardians Indians have not been to the World Series in my lifetime, and I'm considerably older than you are. So
okay, you might have a couple years on me, but I was born in the middle of the Bills Super Bowl runs, so like I think I was alive for like half of those. You can do the math and figure that out, but. So like I grew up with like my parents and the previous generation talking about how great the 90s Bills were, and then I had the 2000s Bills and the misery, but now they're good. So let's hope this is a good year.
That's right. They've got another strong team this year. So let's go back to the mindset thing, because something that relates to that is one of your goals right now is to read a new book every week. Tell me why you're doing that, and what the purpose behind that is.
Yeah, so that's another one. I don't think it was ever really like a stated goal. It just kind of happened. So to take a step back, I was definitely not the kind of person that you would ever find a book in my hand. So I don't think I actually read a book in high school. I did the Spark Notes or the Cliff Notes or whatever, if that. So if you told any of my teachers that I'm reading a book a week, they might not believe it. And then my adult life, I still didn't read much. I got into like, I would read articles and stuff. Like I would say I was well read, and like I would read articles, but it wasn't ever a 300-page book. It was current events, sports stuff, financial stuff, things that I think I need to know for this business. And then for some reason in November of this past, so almost a year ago, November, I was like, I'm gonna start trying to read a book once a month. And I thought, kind of in the same vein of self-betterment, I always look at people who maybe don't exercise or eat as healthy as they should. And I'm not perfect by any means, but to me, it was always like exercise wasn't really an option. It was just like, I need to exercise so that I'm healthy. And then eventually I got around to recognizing that me not reading might be a little bit hypocritical. Like I'm not exercising my mind, and I'm justifying it by saying I don't really like reading. Well, just like the person that doesn't like exercising, I would say they should do it anyway. So somebody could look at me and say, you don't like reading. Well, suck it up and read. So I started to suck it up and read. So I started reading in November with the goal of like, hey, maybe if I do 10 pages a day, 300-ish page book, I could read about 1 book per month. So that was kind of the goal. Like starting at the end of November, I was going to read 1 book per month. So the first book probably took me about 3 weeks, and I did that 10 pages a day. Second book, a little faster. So now I read about a book a week, which is where we get to that 52 books for the year. And I definitely did not go into 2024 with a stated goal of doing that. I just kind of, I have a spreadsheet of the books I read because, I don't know, I want to be organized, I guess. And I started to notice that the lines in the spreadsheet were lining up with about what week it was. So probably in April-ish of this year, I realized I was on pace for 52. So I was like, oh, I may as well try to do that. So now I try to start and end a book every Sunday, which I've been able to do. So yeah, to answer your question, it was never really a stated goal, but I've enjoyed it. I'm not ready to say that I enjoy reading even, which sounds a little weird for somebody reading at the pace that I am, but it is like I'm going to make myself do this to become better. And I think I'm getting there. It's a lot of business books, self-help books. I try to read like a biography once in a while. They're pretty much all nonfiction, I think, but I could send you a list if you want to see them.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to see your list. So, what do you think I think you've already described some of the benefit of that, but is there something in particular that's really jumped out to you as being a benefit that's made you had given you a better mindset, made you a better business person, better financial planner?
I think so. I think it's hard to pinpoint like somebody asked me a while ago, like what's the best book you've read this year? Which one was like the most helpful? And I think if you look in the category of business and self-help, which I think are kind of similar, like they're both, aimed at being better at business or better at life, and those things kind of intertwine. So if you look at like that category, I think you see a lot of common themes in there. Like there's a lot of stuff about time management. There's a lot of stuff about, you and I talked about like delegating or deleting tasks. So as a professional, what are you wasting your time on? And is it better served to hire somebody else to do that? So I found that stuff very helpful. I think more than anything, though, I just find myself in conversation with other people, drawing on something from a book that I don't even really consciously remember that I read. But then I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember reading that somewhere. And then we're able to have a deeper conversation as a result of it, which I think is cool. I'm trying to do more, like some history, biography stuff. So I like learning about different people. I read Shoe Dog was a really cool book. It was about Phil Knight, the guy that started Nike. So kind of like hearing someone's story and how they started their business. So it's kind of a biography crossed with businessy stuff still. But now I'm rambling about books. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
No, I think that's really helpful because it's been a mindset shift for you that you're
Sure.
doing. You're still eating your broccoli, even though you may not want to every day. But in doing that, you're getting stronger intellectually. You're getting probably better at running your business, better
Sure.
at serving your clients, being a better communicator. There's a lot that is coming
Yeah.
from that maybe is not easy to put into single words, but is the manifestation of that.
Sure.
Of that
I think
of
there's something
that.
healthy about doing things you don't want to do. So if it's reading, if it's working out, if it's whatever it is, like make yourself do something you don't want to do. It'll probably make you a better person. But
So I do have to ask you a question about one book in particular. I'm not going to ask you about my book. I'm going to
okay.
ask you about your puppy book because I know that one of the books you read in the last month is about training puppies. So
Yes.
has that
So
helped you?
I don't maybe so so the context of that. So Rob emailed me asking me to read his book. So I was of course happy to do so, but I had explained to Rob that we're getting a puppy and I needed to read the puppy training book first. So I did read it's called Perfect Puppy in 7 Days, which it's not a very thick book, but it's got some pictures in there and tells you all about how to train your puppies. So we got a puppy a week and a half ago, depending on when you're listening to this. So we got a golden retriever puppy. His name is George. He's pretty good so far, but we had to educate ourselves on everything. I never had a puppy before, so everything from how to teach them how to sit to going to the bathroom outside, hopefully eventually here, to crate training. So it was helpful. It was a good read, but I won't say it was like the most interesting book I've read.
I had to ask because I'm a big fan of dogs and puppies, and sound like, and you don't talk to a lot of adults who are buying puppies and they've never had one growing up. It doesn't happen. Doesn't seem, at least to me, doesn't seem to happen that usually.
Yeah, we never had a dog when I was a kid. So I had one dog before my adult life, but we had gotten him as an adult. And then as a kid, my parents never wanted to deal with the work associated with having a dog, so we never did. And I don't know, I was on the fence about whether to get a puppy or do another rescue dog, and we ended up doing the puppy route, which has been exhausting so far, but I'm hoping it's rewarding in the long run.
For sure, you'll learn something from that. Next time we have you on the podcast, we'll ask you what mindset shifts you've made because you are now the 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 uh, the father, the dad of George, the puppy.
George, yeah, it'll be something. Right now, it's just waking up every few hours to let him out, which I knew that going in, but in my mind, it was like, okay, that'll just be for a little while. But like we're a week and a half in, and it's like, oh, this is going to be a few more months of this, huh? But it's all
Yeah.
right.
So let's land the plane. As we end the podcast here, Alex, is there any other message that you'd like to share with the audience about you, how maybe they can connect with you, or maybe something that I didn't ask you about that you want to make sure that you share with the financial advisors at large?
I do, but I'm going to stall on answering the question of other things to share by plugging how you can connect with me. So if you do want to connect with me, we do have our podcast as mentioned. That's the Roadmap to Retirement. It's on all the major platforms. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm on there frequently. We have a website, which is sixpointfp.com. So that's how you can find me. I'm a pretty approachable guy, I like to think. So if you do have questions or there's other things that I can help out with, I'm happy to have a conversation. Other things I want to ask you. So I did want to ask you earlier when we were talking about kind of my journey getting into the business, and you referenced how maybe my generation has a different approach to it than your generation did getting started. So what got you into this business originally?
Um, Really, it all started my last month of college. I was a business and econ major, so financial planning, investment seemed like a natural place to go, but I had no practical experience. But my last month of college, my college, Randolph-Macon, had now I'm forgetting what they called it. It was basically the month of May. You just took one class, and it could be an internship. And I did an internship at what was Payne Weber, is now UBS. And after spending just a few days around a bunch of, they were actually called stockbrokers back then, I decided that the investment business, the financial planning business, was where I wanted to go. And I had an opportunity during that internship to actually not only study the stock market, but also learn a little bit about what a financial plan was, although there wasn't a lot of financial planning going on back. This was the mid 80s. So that's what got me started, and I've been in the industry ever since.
Very cool. It's interesting. It's always fun to hear people's kind of origin stories. And it brings up actually another point in mind is we get the question all the time from younger people, younger than me, even young people who are just graduating college and they want to get into this business and they don't know where to go. And I would think that's a question we get a lot teaching also is people that want to be financial advisors, where to start. And I always kind of suggest there's not like a good way to enter this business. You have to either you go the insurance broker dealer route where you're kind of put into a sales role right away. You go to a bank where they might be slow to get you licensed. You go to a wirehouse, and there's some issues there about maybe the rest of financial planning outside the investment world. But in your opinion, what would you tell a 22-year-old who wants to be a financial advisor? Where should they go and how should they get started?
I think the best way to get started is to do internships. And I'm not just saying that because of my 1 month experience, but I see a lot of success both from the advisors who bring interns on board and the interns who intern for those advisors. There's a really great way to learn the business, understand the process, and to the intern, the 22-year-old, your ideas are wanted. Um, the way that you think about the world is interesting to financial planners, whether you've been at it 12 years or 40 years. It's of help. So I would just encourage, look for those internships. Just reach out to some advisors in your area that are on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'd love to come work for you for a few months and be an intern. That's how I would plug in.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think that financial advisors in particular, because of the way that we got into the industry, you're going to find they're pretty welcome to having a conversation with a young person who's interested. So to the young people out there, reach out to someone and start asking questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can't tell you how many times, probably in a month, I will talk with an advisor who has, as part of his or her dreams, having their son or daughter come into the business. So there's a desire to have a new generation, younger people in the business. expressed in a number of different ways. And there's a lot of opportunity. There are more people out there who need good financial help than there are good financial planners and advisors to help them. You are definitely on the right side of the supply and demand equation.
Couldn't agree more, but I know that we're kind of running out of time, right? Do you need me to stop talking?
Yeah, no, finish up. Anything else?
Oh, no, I'm good. I felt bad. I kept throwing questions at you. You're probably trying to wrap up. So that's all I got.
Yeah, no, this was awesome. Alex, you were an awesome guest. I love the back and forth that we were able to have. I really appreciate you and the spirit that you really put into the work that you do, the energy that you have, and the way that you really obviously enjoy sharing it with other people. And so with that, we'll call it a podcast. I'll remind our audience that we'll see you next week. And most importantly, remember, we're always rooting for your success. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Purpose Focused Advisor. If you want to learn more, head over to our website, truestfancoaching.com. There you'll learn all about becoming a purpose-focused advisor. You'll also find today's show notes and links to the other gifts and resources we talked about during the episode. Again, thanks for listening, and remember, we're rooting for your success.